Corner, part of our Ponga community. For background about this program, see ponga.com/community. This is the second of our sessions where Kathy will highlight the plans she uses herself in working on her own work. This session will focus on the first portion of the details you'll find in her blog post featured at ponga.com member posts. And thank you. Yes, you're already chiming in with where you're from. Please do. That's always a fun thing and delightful to see you so late in the evening from high up in the north of Scotland. It's delightful to see you. How about the rest of you? Where are you coming in from? Welcome, welcome. Come on in. Linda, lovely to see you. So as you all come in and join us, we have structured this one as a webinar and are recording it, which is a change from what we were doing previously. And quite frankly, we can see some value for having these as recordings. I can always pause the recording if anyone would like to go into more detail about something that they don't want to see recorded. That's not a problem at all. We've gone to a webinar just to give us a little more control over inappropriate behavior, which can be a problem. And we'll leave it at that. I do expect a small group here today, Kathy. So do you want to go ahead and get started?
Sure, that'll be wonderful. Do you want them to put questions in the chat as we go?
You know what? I always have trouble keeping track of both Q&A and chat, but feel free to, such a small group, put questions into the chat and we will start with a little bit of an opening and have you go ahead and get, here I am, but after my brief remarks, have you go ahead and get started and then have you all join us in a discussion and I'll promote you to panelists so you can go ahead and show your faces, get to know one another, and we can have a more casual conversation. So I'm Barbara Tien, one of the co-founders here at Ponga. And we are building a system, as you know, to create a better way to share family stories using the mementos, photographs, and artifacts that our families have passed on. We look at these and we know there are stories in there, but until we connect those to the objects themselves, those stories can be lost. And that's what we've built today in Ponga. And you can read more about that at ponga.com. We've hosted a variety of different kinds of programs that you can see at ponga.com events. And this one is a very special one because Kathy is one of our very own members, came to us from our very first days and has been a professional photo organizer for decades in the Canadian Rockies. And now as she transitions to focus on her own work, she's realized that there are some very special bits of insight that she has having done it professionally when she turns to her own work. So we've realized that these kinds of insights can be tremendously helpful to mere mortals like us doing our own stuff. And it's as a service, it's one of the things that we at Ponga feel that we can bring to all of you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kathy to tell us a little bit about what she's up to.
Wonderful, thanks, Barb. I think first is Barb shared the link in the chat to that blog post, so you won't need to take notes. That's what we're going to talk about today is those 8 steps from tubs of photos to the tales of yore, which I love that the subtitle there. I thought I'd start off actually today because I know one of the biggest things is feeling overwhelmed, and particularly if you have photos that have been passed down to you, and there always seems to be the person who gets everything. And if you're the person, I'm guessing that's partly why you're here, because it has become your job to look after everything. And so it's easy to get overwhelmed. So I thought I'd show you some pictures, which I have permission to share, of a client job. And this is what I walked into when I first started with them. And I'm going to share. Can we see that, Barb?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so we're just going to, so this is a walk-in closet at this home. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of stuff in there. So these are just there was a lot of different things. Those were all albums. I think we had something like 72 albums in the end when we gathered them all together. And there's not a lot of order to all this. We had over 200 things in frames. This was in the actual room itself where the closet was. This is just another table full of things. That little backpack there, which was really neat, it was quite old. It was filled with letters.
Oh,
Letters written by my client's mother to her father and from him to her during their courting time in the 1920s, I think. So I can't believe I've forgotten. And then, as you can see in the background, we have pictures still in their original folders. We had some shovels. Those are commemorative shovels for a couple centers my clients, they were philanthropists, they donated to. So that needed to somehow be recorded and saved. Kind of just to look at what the bins looked like. I was going to show you this later, but you could just get this now. This is one of my favorite tools. Sorry, it's a bit blurry. We made big family charts to keep track of the family, and I didn't write on the wall. My client's daughter wrote on the wall when we were working because the house is unoccupied, even though it's in good shape. But we started making family charts, starting with my client and moving up to all the different sides of the family. Because as we came across more information, it seemed like a better idea than losing it to start keeping track of it. So we had started with the things on the wall. Then we started, 1939 is when they met. Okay, so we started to write things out by date because we were consistently going, what year did this, as I just did, what year did they get married? What year did they move here? And they moved a lot. So
are those little blue boxes around places?
these, yes, they're all around places they lived
I see.
in those years.
Wow.
They moved something like 41 times before they got to Calgary in 1940. So they moved
That's
a lot.
impressive.
So these are the sheets that these ones, we had some on the other wall too. They started in the doorway to the room, but these are the sheets we started, and we had stuff written down from 1885, and then it went up all down the next wall to up until the middle 2000s when my client's parents had passed away. So that became our sort of our information. And I think that's important to do, is to find something, either a notebook. You might not need the walls because if only one of you looking at it, but and we just keep adding information to the walls as we look through things, so that you're not losing having to go back and try and figure out what things are later. It's a great way to track information. That's the boxes some of the boxes, those are the boxes we sorted photos into, and just to look at mid-sort of a particular pile of photos there, probably came out of that blue bin in the corner. And those were getting all sorted by date. There's just some more of what we had. This is after it started to take on a much neater shape. And you can see the blue tape was very useful, and that's all the numbered bins. So we found it very useful to number the bins so we could keep track, which I'll show later on a spreadsheet. But there was a lot of stuff there, and just sort of, as you can see, not a whole lot of order to anything until we got working on it. So I just thought that was, if you're feeling overwhelmed, I just thought I would show you how overwhelmed I felt when I took on that job.
So if you're feeling overwhelmed, don't worry, it can get worse. Is that what you're saying?
I guess so. Yeah, it could be way worse. So. But with systems, I'm just going to close that window so it's not my way. With systems, it becomes easy to get past that overwhelm and work on that. And I think for my learning from this week, that's sort of from between the last month and now, is I've started working taking some digital scrapbooking lessons later in the month, and I had to gather photos, and it came to my attention that I haven't done a very good job of keeping track of my own photos. And so that, I think, is part of getting organized. And I think I've dove right into the planning and the gathering of photos, because that's the first thing we did with all that stuff, was to start sorting and gathering. And we used broad categories, either by family, because there were quite a few families in there. We used they had about 4 major charitable philanthropist, things that they donated money to on a regular basis. So we started out with just one big thing for the charitable things, and then thought, no, we've got to split these, because if you're giving money to build entire concert halls, there's a lot of stuff and photos and other stuff. So we just came up with some broad categories that were related to the life of the clients, like what they did. They were big golfing. They founded a golf tournament. So there was another bin we set up, and we pitched all the golf stuff in it, so that later on, so it was like sifting. We call it sifting through, not trying to go big box by big box, because then it's sort of, where do I put it? Everything is a different size. And we also, to a degree, sorted by how it was needed to be digitized. Because there, as you saw there, we had a ton of stuff in frames, and that meant that all had to be taken out of the frames before we could do anything with it. We had great big huge posters that were like wall-size posters that needed to be scanned on a flatbed. We had a lot of high-speed scanning. We had videos and everything to digitize. So we found it another way of sorting that was to separate how things needed to be scanned. And it would work whether you're scanning your own stuff, and I'm dealing with that right now. I have a lot of my stuff scanned. Some of it still needs scanning, and I'm now digging through child's artwork, which is another thing that needs to be digitized, but you're not going to put that through the high-speed scanner. It's going to have to be dealt with separately. So that found out with dealing with a huge quantity, another way to get that gathering done. You want to think of everywhere you might find photos, and gathering during this project, and I think in everything, even with personal stuff, gathering doesn't ever really seem to be done. It has maybe a beginning, but I'm not sure yet if there's a clear end to it. So think of all the places you might be able to find the things you want, that you need to work with. You're looking for photos, you're looking for documents, you're looking for negatives, slides. If you find negatives with the photos, don't put them in separate places just yet. You might want to do that down the road. In this job, someone had thought it would be a great idea to separate all the negatives from the photos. So they pulled all the negatives out of the envelopes with the pictures in them and put them all in a big bin. So, and the logic was good, but I won't explain that. We're going forever. But it did kind of take a long time then to see, after we sorted all the prints and finally dealt with the thing of negatives, because you will get a better scan from a negative. It's considered the original. But again, if you only have prints, that's what you scan. I've scanned an awful lot of prints because we just don't have the negatives. So, and also, if you are looking at cost and time, if you contract out scanning negatives, it costs more. If you do them yourself, unless you have unless you're camera scanning, I think it takes longer than putting prints through a high-speed scanner too. So it's a decision to be made. And I joke that with my own photos, I said the pictures that we took with the Instamatic, where we cut somebody's head off, the head's not coming back no matter how it gets scanned. So you got to make a decision on what is, what gets the job done. I think that's what we're looking at here now, is what gets the job done. We're not trying to turn you into professionals, but how do you get the job done? And then once you've got most of all the stuff that you know of gathered, we gathered all that stuff up, and we had about, well, I don't even know how much more, several more times where some bins came from another house full of photos that belonged in the collection as well. So there was continual additions to it. And by keeping careful track of things, it became much easier to cope with finding more stuff. It's like, oh, somebody else had a pile of pictures, in my case, from the farm. Now I know where those go.
That's
sorry that I got to, so I don't see chats popping up. I got to shut the preview off. There we go. Okay, so I'm easily distracted. The next step after gathering everything together, and I put them in whatever you have. I like clear Rubbermaid bins because I can see what's in them. I can look at a glance and not have to go, oh, what's in bin 48? I can tell it's documents. I can tell it's photos. I can tell, oh, that one's not sorted yet. So I like clear bins, but I've got stuff in photo boxes that you get at the Michael's craft store, or I think Michael's is in the States too, but at the craft store or the storage place, that not necessarily what you want to use for long-term storage, because they're not necessarily archival, but something to sort in. Shoe size is really good because that holds 4x6 and 3x5 photos quite well, and they'll stand up so they're easier to look at. So whatever you can find. Then the next thing that I recommend, that's the step I've gone back to, is because I keep thinking of more things I need to do, is to plan the scope of the work. And one of the basic questions is, what's your end goal? What are you trying to accomplish, besides digging through all this stuff that's now in your house and narrowing it down? But what do you want at the end? Do you want them all? Do you want to be able to see them with their stories in Ponga? That's what I want to do with mine. But I'm probably not going to put all my photos in there. I think that I'm not going to put, I'm going to pick the best and create a legacy, because we don't need all the photos. Like, we don't necessarily need to keep everything. Once you know what your end goal is, then it's time to start thinking about, okay, how am I going to go about this? And that's what I like about starting to, or when you're gathering the things up and getting some bins to put things in, is if you tackle it and say, okay, the first step is I have to organize absolutely everything, which is how my professional job worked. We do the steps, you do the whole collection. Well, that took like a year to sort that out. And so it wasn't exactly, some days were extremely exciting. Some days were like, oh, here we go again. Can I look through another great big Rubbermaid full of newspaper clippings? Or can I look in what we jokingly referred to as the box, started out as the Book of the Dead and turned into the Box of the Dead, but all the obituaries collected over 50, 70 years. There were a lot of them, but they're also excellent sources of information. So while we maybe got rid of quite a few, some of them were kept because they were important family members, and some of them, a lot of them were scanned so that the information could be retained. So that's part of that initial gathering and making your plan. And that's part of your plan, is how to get ready to move on to the next step, which is the sorting of them. So part of planning too is to set some time aside. We talked about this last week or last month. Set a bit of things aside, set on your calendar, set aside, figure out what is reasonable for me to work on this, either every day, every week. I don't think I'd set it aside to be much more than a month, if you not 15 minutes a month, or you'll be there forever. But even 15 minutes a day, it's amazing how much you can get done. It's tough if you have to spread stuff out like over your kitchen table. Makes it a little tougher then to be able to do that. But even if you can find a table in a corner somewhere, but put in your calendar, just like you have to go get groceries or you have to go to the gym, book time to work on the photos, or it'll always be that thing that you wish you always are going to want to have climbed Mount Inertia, and you won't get moved. You have to plan time in your schedule to do it. And that's probably my biggest tip that I've started doing now, because while I was organizing other people's photos, mine were always sitting there waiting, but it was like, oh, I got to get this project done. I've got to do this. I have to do that. And they just get done. So you want to make sure you get it done. So plan.
I like to think of that as hooking it to something I enjoy doing, or I know I will have to do, like walk the dog, and
Yeah,
yet I treat it as a treat for myself.
yeah,
So it's
it's a
something
break.
you're
So,
doing for yourself and hooked to something you have to do anyway.
and it is a treat to do. It's a treat to look through old photos. It's fun. You also may have, while we're talking about what you're gathering, what I call memorabilia or artifacts, the stuff that isn't flat, it isn't a picture. Kids' artwork is one of them, because a lot of it's not flat. As I mentioned, things keep coming to you. I was given a gift at the end of, I think I mentioned this in our last one. I probably did. I was given a very nice gift when I was visiting my family, of my grandfather's war medals in a frame that had been in the possession of my cousin who passed away. And his kids decided that because of my fascination in family history, that it was the best place to go. So more came in. I'm very touched to have it, but now it's gone into this because it's got both his World War I and World War II medals in it. So now I've got to get all that stuff photographed. And that's the easiest way. I think Barb's talked about Shopbox before. The easiest way is just to take pictures of that stuff. It's I have scanned medals and got fairly good results on a flatbed scanner, but it's dangerous because your flatbed scanner is glass and you don't want to move stuff around on it. So I think that's
Scratches.
all about planning. And I set up a spreadsheet, and I was talking with Barbara before we came online here that I just discovered that I'm trying to find, as I mentioned, trying to find a bunch of photos of a specific kind. And I know in my head I have them, but I can't lay my fingers on them yet because it's my stuff first. But there's a spreadsheet. I'm going to just try and see if I can quickly show it to you. There it is, that I've sent over to Barbara today, and we're probably going to do a little bit of fixing of it, but a spreadsheet.
You'll see it soon. We've talked about embedding it or attaching a link to it from this blog post. So you'll be able to get your hands on this. I know I want to use it myself.
Yes. So I'll tidy it up a little bit. You don't need Calgary Photo Solutions on it. You don't need client name on it. But I just started this with a couple. I just did this today as fake, but just so you could see a box number all those bins, because that way, I don't think there was a picture of it, but we used that tape to label all the bins. And every time one got sorted, we'd stick the tape on the wall. And as the wall got more and more and more and more pieces of tape, it really looked like it's like chickens checking stuff off the to-do list. More tape on the wall made us very happy. So it looked, you accomplished something.
Kathy, earlier I posted a reference to a new discovery for me, which is the Canva. Many of you know Canva for a variety of uses, but they've introduced a new whiteboard feature that's very cool because it's an infinitely large board that you can just keep doing. And I love your photo of that wall. And it's intuitive, right? And you can use little colored stickies on this infinite wall. And then also, by the way, be sharing it with, your kids or your, whoever else might be
if you can
helping
do that
you with the project.
Canva, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
What
I'm going to do.
We'll have to talk about that on another call or another session sometime.
Sure.
Oh, and again, you can change these. I have something there called the printed index card. And unfortunately, I shut that there. This is what I'll just have to hold this up. We'll get you a picture of it so you can see it better. But this is an index card, and I've been using just old. I have a lot of photosafe paper from my scrapbooking paper days, and I've been cutting it all up and using it. So this particular index card it was from 1939, and in the corner are numbers. So we numbered all the index cards because you got your boxes numbered, but a box might have like 4,000 things in it. It might have 4 different years in it. It can have all sorts of stuff. So what we did was sorted as we went, and then numbered everything. So this spreadsheet is really long for this client's work, but we put the index card number in it, and then a description of what is, what's the subject. So I've got this box that I discovered in our basement here that's my stuff from the 70s to the early, well, it probably goes past the 80s, probably up to about the 90s. So it's my youth back then. And it's all in a bin, and I found it in the basement. So go ahead, Barb. You have a question?
So the index card lives with a box, and the spreadsheet matches what's on that card.
Yes.
It doesn't actually have to be a pre-printed index card. It could be a page that you sort of a template for, and you fold it up and stick it in there, and you have it visible from the outside, and it's like a tracer that they use in manufacturing.
Yeah, it's like a tracker.
A tracker tracer, yeah.
When you're scanning, we scan these cards in front of the set of photos. And so all the information gets on, and behind it are the 10 or the 50 or however, the 2. This was a newspaper article that only had one. It was a photo. And the neat part about why we use the numbers is there were 2 things connected with this. So I'll read it what it says, since I picked a poor example that's dark, light pencil on white, but it says a preacher who was my client's grandfather in Whitesboro, Texas, which I'm pronouncing wrong. I think it's Whitesboro. My apologies to any Texans on the call. And it says the president of Whitesboro Community Agriculture Club presented a cow to the preacher that was given by Dr. Holland from the Denton Hospital. So there was a newspaper article about the preacher getting this cow, and there was the actual photo that was in the newspaper, but an actual real print. And so obviously scanning was going to be different than with the newspaper because it had to be done on a large flatbed. So the coded numbers, when we go back to sort scans out, then we can reunite the different items. And that I found very helpful in keeping track. And I have no idea why I didn't do it with, well, partly because I haven't done a whole lot in my own photos since, but I am using index cards with my own photos. And you don't necessarily have to number them. Numbering helps with a huge quantity, but or in the case, like the stuff I'm working on now is current, and at some point I sorted all the negatives out and wrote the dates on them. So they weren't with the photos, but they're all dated. And so it's very easy to put the dates on the batch of photos and match them to the negatives. So I get ready for digitizing, which is always the goal. So
Right.
on here, then you want to know where the physical stuff is, because you have to find it later. And it stops you having to sort immediately into a final product. Like that's what we're trying to avoid, because we'd spend forever trying to sort everything. So if you just use, or you could mark your categories, set it up under your categories instead of boxes. Again, how much stuff do you have? So I've numbered them, and I've liked to write down what the bins are, because that's how I'll remember what they are. As soon as I see that, I go, oh yeah, that's that box. And I wrote down here that it just has photos in it, but there's also some albums in it that need to be dealt with. And then so it's not digitized yet. So the other stuff that I have another box that's got my mom and my mom's family stuff in, and that's where all the farmier stuff is. And it's in my office under my desk. And it's photos and negatives, and it's already scanned. But I can't say that it's edited, and not all of it's loaded up to Ponga. So those are my other categories, so I know what I'm doing. So it's to keep track of where it becomes a workflow to follow. So, okay, I'm going to do box 1 today, and then either I finish it or I don't. I write any notes in there that are things that are important to write on about the whole box, or about that, about that particular.
So these little notes that you're adding, again, you're adding the notes into the cards.
Right.
They can be essentially prompts for you when you get to the Ponga picture.
Exactly.
Because that's where you could just record your voice. You could go get that video that the home movie that is stored as an unlisted on YouTube or whatever else.
Yeah,
You've got that
exactly.
interactivity.
Yeah. So
Very cool.
It's perfect. Like
because it gives you that moment of dwelling over the tangible object to
yeah.
feeling the moment, and then a little shorthand in your own handwriting
Mhm.
might itself, if it has some little love note from a child or something like
Yeah.
that, become itself an artifact to add to the Ponga picture. But
And
it's got the
with the numbering, it allows you to number if you're trying to so you're like, well, I have a photo, why wouldn't I write the information on the back of the photo? One, writing on photos isn't the best. You never write on one with a pen. And my heart goes out to you if somebody in your family wrote all over your photos in a pen, and now the ink is shooting through there. This is a Stadler pencil, and it's photo safe. It's a photo safe. It's like I don't think it has I don't know what it is. It's called a photo labeling pencil, and it's really soft.
right.
You can do that, but you're adding even though it's made to write on photos, you're adding little bits of particles of pencil
Grit.
lead to the
Yeah.
photo pile when you're trying to keep them clean. And you got to scan the backs then.
And a print is an original. There is
Yes,
one
exactly.
of it. At the end of the day, any number of things could happen to that original.
Yeah.
As I like to say, a photo is optical magic onto paper. Now you have one that's paper. Now go make digital of it.
Exactly. And it's just easier. Like if I wasn't using the card, I'd have to write this information, and like this card, I said there's only 2 photos. Some of them have like 50 photos or 60 because they were all of a big event. I would have to write on the back of all of those photos to do that. And we do scan the backs if there's already information written on it. And we sort of use that, well, let's keep a bit a sample or two of an important family member's handwriting. One of the aunts wrote on every single picture she ever sent. We're like, probably don't need to keep what, and she wrote like the name and the date. We want the information on
Yeah.
attached to the actual photo,
Yeah.
but we don't necessarily need to scan every single back.
Yeah. I have a great aunt who would write these for the last few years of her life. She was writing letters to my mother with background about what the story was, and then folding it up and sending the letter with a stack of photos.
Yeah.
That letter has not only her handwriting, but this wonderful wrapping of context.
And that's
It's a
just
treasure.
exactly a perfect example of where you'd want to save the scan of, like, you want to digitize those letters. And the same, like if somebody's, and I can't think of an example right now, but someone, my client's mother had a terrific sense of humor, or she had this my kind of sense of humor, not sure which that is, but and she'd write goofy things on the back of photos she was sending off to her siblings. So that I could stop sharing my screen now because I think we've looked at that long enough. I just realized I still was. That you want to keep. You want to scan. That's part of the story, and in her own handwriting. But we don't need to keep it for every single picture
Yeah.
that she wrote. We don't need the ones where she just
Yeah.
wrote the day down.
Yeah. I think as new generations spend very little time actually in longhand, more
Mhm.
artifacts of longhand, the artifacts that we carry forward from our own past in longhand become more important. And to remember to treat those like photos themselves.
And so once you finished with the your planning and you've gathered everything together, and now when you're actually sorting, those are some tools you can use for the actual sorting. And you've decided you'll have the structure laid out to work with for how to get everything ready and how to get what, okay, here's a batch of this. It's all together now. It's all ready. I'm going to send that batch, or I'm going to scan that batch. And then I'm going to move on to the next steps and do there's 8 steps. So then next is I'm going to get it digitized. That's the next step. And then when that comes back, then you've got to store that. I'm just going to go over these quickly, and then we'll talk about questions. You'll store those photos and the physical and the digital, and that becomes part of your plan. And that's what else you need for location. There's something that we use, actually it's used by archivists, what I learned this, but is tracking the provenance of an item. Now, you might not have to get that crazy, but it's things like, I'm going to write down that my cousin Richard had Grandpa Hodgson's medals, and that when he passed, it was given to me. And then we're still debating what's going to happen after me. So, and there's lots of options, but it'll be the provenance of it and the location of it, because there is a possibility that the Canadian War Museum will take all my grandfather's stuff from World War II. And so that would just leave the British stuff behind. And so then I don't know if they take it in England or not, but the War Museum will take any of that. And so to us, that sort of seems like, and they'll take all the actual physical photos if everybody is like at the point where they're like, well, I don't have a big house to keep all this in.
But that's also creating an artifact that later generations can go back and say, oh, my family stuff is at this museum. How cool is that?
Exactly. Yeah.
And
And so you
now it's
want to
going to
keep
be
track
cared for by curators.
of the
Yeah.
locations forever. And we'll talk in another Kathy's Corner about archival storage and that. But and sorting, you don't need to go into that much detail, because Pong is going to sort by photo, by use its facial recognition, use that power. And if you're using the index card system and Ponga, it's going to put everybody all together. And then you've got written on the index card, like it's going to pull out all my pictures of the preacher when, who actually, he did have a name besides preacher, but that's what he was called. It'll include all the photos of him. And then I'll know, okay, here's the one that goes with this particular card. Here's the picture of him getting the cow. And there's got to be a story of why someone was giving the preacher a cow. Like that's got to be a story to be told, because there's a picture of the man, of preacher in his suit, his pastor's suit, with a cow. So it's like, you got to tell the stories, and that's the whole part of it. So I'm just looking at the blog. Yeah, so it says pick a batch. If you want a professional to help scan, make them scan your index cards. Just say, when I got scanning jobs that were sorted like that, I was just delighted, because then you can also name when you're scanning, the folder can be called 1970 Kathy High School.
Mhm,
And then every picture takes on that name,
mhm.
which you might want to change after, but it's a whole lot easier to deal with sorting the digital stuff if there's some information in the name of the photo, not just image X number or scan number 4000. So that's part of the, I think, the organizational part of the index cards. And just, it makes it easy to write information down, because you could write it all over the walls. Then we would have to move it all back onto, but all that stuff we wrote on the walls for information for ourselves, it'll all be on the index card that went with that particular item, that where we got the information from,
Mhm.
be it whatever those pictures were.
So again, you could use these index cards for a single object or an entire box full of objects.
Exactly, depending on the relationship
Mhm,
in the box. And
mhm,
so there's some things that ended up with the same number. And I printed their little Avery labels that were like key tags. They're little tiny
mhm,
Avery labels. And I just printed all the numbers out just so I didn't have to write them, but you can write them.
mhm, mhm.
Partly because we got it, I don't know, we are into the 6,000 or I don't know what we got
You
to,
could,
8,000 index cards. So you don't really
so
want to be writing that many things, but
as a way to sort of break the problem down, you can also slap a number on a card and a number, essentially at a high level sort, on a box. I know this was all my mom's
yep,
stuff. I pulled it out of her apartment. I haven't gone
yep.
through it yet. And then later, as I go through it, then I can start creating more and
The
just
funnel or the
funnel.
sift, that's the key, is start with broad, funnel or sift it down, and it's less overwhelming. Because if you just start
Magic.
with like that room full of stuff,
Mm.
you just sort of go rip
Ah,
your hair out, because you don't have it doesn't give you a starting point. But if
mm,
you start with very broad categories, another thing I've seen for sorting, if you're sorting on a table, is just probably I didn't look to see. I just pulled this out because I still use an adding machine sometimes. It's adding machine tape. Rip off great big piece of it, tape it to your table, and you can write years and decades on it and pile
mhm,
the pictures right in front of
mhm,
it,
mhm,
just as you're doing a sort.
mhm.
And the other sorting tip I wanted to give is with old photos, another way to which we call again the trying to gather stuff, rather than looking at every picture and trying to remember, oh yeah, I saw a picture of the kids playing in a snowbank somewhere in here, but I don't know where that, because in my case, these images were not in, like, all the pictures that went together were not together. Um, Turn them upside down and sort them by size. Go by and then it's like shuffling cards, but if you put them out by cards, because chances are, and this wasn't 100% because there's a time when that doesn't work, but chances are, if the picture is a square in the 50s, it doesn't match the 4x6.
Right,
They're not going to be together, even if they were thrown in the same box.
right,
So that's another tip to speed up the sorting process,
right.
is then, and you could also look at a lot of the photos in the old times had the decal edges.
Decollates, yeah,
A lot of
or the
people
little
talk,
brownie
well, we
photos.
just chop that off when we're scanning, or what should I do? And I'm like, I left every one of them
Oh,
because
yeah,
it's part of the story.
yeah.
And there's actually, I can send resources to Barb after. There's actually websites where you can look up the approximate age of a photo by the type of decal edge it has on it.
Mhm. You
So,
know, I'm popping with all kinds of ideas for templates and things that
mhm,
would just generally be useful to people.
yes,
I'd love to start at the beginning of that timeline, because
yeah,
whatever you've done with your photos, whatever you've done with your objects, time, year by year or decades even, to make
yep.
that funnel really, really
You
big
still use the
is,
sheet.
and then you
Yep,
slap in there what you know to be someone's lifespan,
yep.
those kinds of things, and into
And
a
it
big white
crosses
wall.
that. There's a gray line between, in my view anyway, between genealogy and photo organizing, or working on your photo legacy. Like, you may not be a bear, I don't know, if this is a really intense genealogist. You may be not, you may be coming to this as a genealogist. If you're not, you don't necessarily need to go that deeply into it. But when you're organizing your old family photos, you're going to get into genealogy because that's all there.
You
And
know
so
what? Here's an idea. Photogenealogy. Wait, there's somebody. Photogenealogy.
yeah,
We have
because
the photogenealogist with us, Anne
yes,
Markham.
it's all connected. And I would think a genealogy with only documents would be really boring when there's photos that would go with it. So, but okay, I've talked too long. Sorting. I'll talk one other thing, and this is in the blog before, and we won't go into digital magic. We'll talk. I want to see the people who are here now. One of the biggest things that somebody in the photo managing world said one time was, I put it this way in terms of what to keep, what to get rid of, is to look at things from the perspective of what do people need to have? What do you want to pass on? Like, we want to have my grandfather's medals and his stuff. What do people need to see? And you, Barbara, there's an example of children's art, because I'm looking at that. I just Easter decorated and found kindergarten stuff for my 26-year-olds. I'm like, maybe we don't need to keep that. Maybe we can just take a picture and get rid of it now, because we don't really need that many boxes of Easter stuff. And that becomes what you digitize, and that may apply to pictures too. There might be a lot of pictures that you don't need to actually keep the prints of once you've digitized them, because now you can save that.
Packets are cheap.
And it's tough because as we go, like when we first started, like to me, photos, I don't know, I guess photos that are from the 1940s, 50s, to me, you should just keep them because they're really old. Well, now, like who pointed out the other day, like I just realized I'm going to be married 30 years next year. And I'm like, oh, okay, that was the 90s. The 90s are going to have been 30 years ago. So that's pretty old too. So that's a tough line to cross, but I think it's more important as to what's the subject that you need to keep the photos. And I have a hard time throwing away photos from the early 1900s. Like that chokes me to, because you don't, and you also only have 2 or 3. You don't have 400 or 500. So, and what things do people need to know? And that's what Pong is all about. We're telling people what they need to know. What are the stories? What's the legacy? And that's the fun part.
So what do they need to have? Keep the original object. What do they need to see? They can be digitized. And what do they need to know? Those are the priorities that have to be written down.
Yeah.
I love that.
And I think it helps in, and again, I'll say I use the Bouchard Gardens as an example, in here in Canada. If you have, if you went to the Bouchard, we'll use the Rocky Mountains, it's clear. If you always went to the Rocky Mountains and camped every year, and you took thousands of pictures of the mountains, which you didn't in the old days, but you know what I'm saying. Do you need every single picture of them with nobody in them? Do you need to keep, or if you want, digitize them because you took them, but do you really need all those prints? So that's where it helps to me, that just hit me as that's a really good way to look at it.
Helpful to think about prints as just an instantiation of the image.
Yeah.
And you can have it once you have it in digital form, you can have it in multiple places in digital form.
Exactly. Yeah.
But you don't always have to have it instantiated in print.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and I think always keep in mind, then this is Barbara's statement that she said to me, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good or the done. Either one would be.
It depends on which way you're flowing.
Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't have to be perfect. Like if all you can do is scan with your phone, that's going to be way better than nothing. So just
Kathy,
do what you can.
So this has been great. This has been absolutely great. A vintage Kathy, and so wonderful. I want to take the moment with our 3 guests here and promote everyone to panelists and have you just chime on in with your own questions. So Anne Larkham, our very own photogenealogist, joining us here. And Linda Tether, welcome, Linda. Lovely to see you. And Suzette, welcome. Oops, let's see if I can do this. I have to take these steps.
You got Anne there.
I got Anne there. I'm working on this here.
Hi, Anne.
There you go. And it just takes a second, I think. As you all come on in, feel free to unmute yourselves and join us. Let's see, did that work? Suzette, I've got you in a second. Here it goes. It takes a second.
Linda in now.
Come on in.
Linda, we won't see unless you turn your
on your
camera
camera.
on, but that's up to you. But at least unmute yourself so we can talk to you.
So Anne, Welcome. I know it's very late for you. Appreciate your staying up so late. I hope you got that nap.
I did, thank you.
Did you have any questions for Kathy?
I do, Kathy, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Can you tell me how you deal with those moments of nostalgia when you're going through your photographs, that you pick one up and you hold on to it and the rest of the world goes away, you forget about all the other photographs and you just lose yourself in that moment? How do you deal with that as a professional and not spend a week on one photo?
Yes. Well, there's Linda. Hi, Linda. As a professional, it's obviously easier because they're not my photos. So I'm looking more at when deciding to keep things, is it a good photo, especially when there's a whole bunch like of the same thing. But I think for doing your own is you have a like a 5-second rule that you can reminisce maybe for 10 seconds, but you set a limit that's shorter than the whole day to
Okay.
reminisce. And then maybe you want to write a note on that little index card that this is something you want to revisit. This is a really important photo, and then you'll have that note when you scan, when you see the scans when you're done, and you'll be able to do your reminiscing in Ponga as a story and get that reminiscing recorded, because a lot of that's what it is we're going back to the memories of that event or the people in there. And that's the kind of stuff we need to write down and keep or say in Ponga, or, so that we pass that on like that, because that's what tells us what, and usually for me, it's almost always when I'm looking at different pictures of people, is just remembering things that were happening, and that becomes the story. So again, that's get past, but keep in mind that as soon as you get to telling the stories, you'll get to reminiscing. But make notes so you remember. That's the other key, because
and another benefit of Ponga as well, the chance to reminisce and tell that story.
Yes, and just to dictate it, even it is without a doubt another benefit. So
thank you, that's great advice.
No problem. But that is part of it. It's hard when we're going through those boxes and bins of photos that we even I'm struggling with that even now when I'm sending my kids' childhood. There's another overcoming Mount Inertia. I'm still working on my boys were born in 96 and I'm up to 1998. But as I'm looking back at those pictures, I'm seeing things we did that I didn't even remember. And it's just, it's awesome. Like, just awesome.
Yeah. Linda, Suzette, I want to make sure that you have a chance to ask questions as well.
Well, I'm just going to say, when I started my mom stuff, I had a card table, and I started with the way back, all the pictures, and I put them into the year. I've done mine by years. And I found that was the easiest for me. Just to do it. And she lived to be 96, so there's not many pictures back when she was young, of course, but as the years went on, well, more, say, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. Yeah.
And I think that's an important point you make, Linda, too, about you sorted them by year, because you need to do what makes sense to you.
Because I'm an order person.
And even if you don't know the year, like you're right about, it's about this time. Like I'm looking at pictures of my kids from kindergarten. I'm like, I don't know who any of those kids are anymore. Like, they all look like, I thought I'd remember them, but apparently not. But the year, if years make sense, then because it's got to make sense to you. It's got to suit your style of, and I've always found with categories, like if you search, because somebody said, well, I use categories like vacations, I kind of get. Somebody said, well, I put all the birthday and Christmas together. And I'm like, well, isn't the first question when you pick up a whole stack of Christmas pictures, what year? So I don't know if you can ever, even if you aren't really hung up on chronological order, I don't think you can ever really escape it, because then you sort of need to sort those Christmases out and at least put them together. But so that's a good tip too.
But some people aren't number people, so they wouldn't see that. No, it's very informative.
It's a very interesting question as to how we.
A suggestion in the chat about using a chess clock when you're getting reminiscing too much. I love it.
And actually, you know what? Now that you mention it, to your point that every picture that you want to pause to reminisce about is probably an important one. Make yourself a little sticker, a red note, pen or something on that card, not the picture, on the card, that this is one to come back to, and yeah, chess clock, which I
And
think
if,
you can set the time for.
if you're working ongoing and things aren't going to get stored for a long time, there's really no reason why you can't stick a Post-it onto the back of the photo. Like, you don't want to leave it there when you store it away because they aren't archival. But
Professional advice, Post-it notes come in different levels of stickiness.
mhm.
And if you aren't careful, you either have the kind that just won't give up, or you have the kind that just fall right off. So know your Post-its.
Yeah.
3x5 cards, or even colored 3x5 cards.
And that's we
Motivation.
could use a color system with the cards, but that's another possibility too, is to also
Yeah.
like we were using up old paper. Was the goal there was to get rid of all my large inventory of scrapbooking paper.
I'm going to get some of that drafting tape, it's called. No, it's the blue tape that's used, painter's tape.
Painter's tape.
Painter's tape.
I used
Great
all
stuff.
blue. Green. Someone said the other day we're using green. I went, well, that's a good idea. The writing would show up better on it. It's a little lighter, but green, some kind of painter's tape, because it comes off easy. It doesn't stick.
And I'm, me, I'm going to take a digital angle on this. Digital whiteboards, my new big thing.
I may actually do that for my spreadsheet.
We'll talk some more.
Whiteboard, because I do like the visual too.
So we've got this Kathy's Corner idea has got legs, so to speak. And it is something that we're going to continue with, because the actual logistics of actually getting this done takes a little bit of what they call a mastermind group or an accountability group. And I think it's helpful to you already, Kathy, in terms of saying, I'm telling other people about this. I guess I better actually do it. And really coming together and having this focus of what you're going to take. I love your concept of that, making it a daily part of a routine and not some massive project. We're big on batches, and we're always looking at how that little batch can be. I think of it as my sunset cruise through my pictures. When the day comes on and I have chickens. That's really the secret, is I have chickens home, and I have to put chickens to bed at sunset. So I'm very keyed relative to sunset. And taking that moment to take stock of the day and go back to that ongoing project is a way to sort of keep that centering.
And when I first heard about it, I thought, oh, what am I going to get done in 15 minutes? But it's amazing once you have the plan there, and because I'm busy, I'm still busy. I got behind me. I don't know if you can see them. They're right behind the chair. I'm busy sorting digitizing the rest of the pictures that were taken with camera, as opposed to the phone, or pre-digital camera photos of my kids. And I could get a lot batched up in, because I'm trying, some ways I struggle with, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good, or because I'm matching up, because I made scrapbooks for mother-in-law, mother, and pictures away. So I'm matching the negatives to the prints to make sure that, because which pictures do you give away or put in albums? The good ones. So I'm going through to make sure I get the best pictures out, that where the negatives are gone. And also this was the age of, hey, get 6 sets of prints for 25 cents or 3 sets free. And so I've got like box loads of photos here to get rid of. And just your tip, if you're because somebody always asks, you can't recycle photos, you have to put them in the garbage, which chokes me up. But again, you really don't need them, that many copies of. And unfortunately, they printed their lousy photos and the good ones. Like, you didn't get a choice.
This is a little part of my privacy mania, but I would actually slice them before you put them in the garbage, because
I sit down at night and shred them.
Face geometries, it's a thing, especially now in the world, in the days of generative AI.
Yeah. So, any other questions? Suzette, you want to come off mute and ask us a question? Or there she is. Hello.
Hi.
I'm still at work, so I've been just listening in the background.
That's okay.
That's
Yeah.
fine. We're honored that you turned the camera on.
No, I was just curious what you were all talking about. I've got my grandmother's, both sides, their photo albums, their photos, their newspaper clippings and stuff like that. And I've started scanning some of the stuff and putting it on my own website. So I was just curious what you guys were all doing. And
Yep.
so
Yeah,
yeah, I'll be checking out the website a little bit more, see if I can get the cousins to come online and contribute more. And
I
great.
think that for me is why I wanted to use Ponga when I first heard. Well, the ease of attaching everything in one place. So I shared it with Barb, and if I think I'm logged into my, not the right account, so I won't try to figure that out right now. But I did a digital scrapbook page, because that's what I do now for this other project I'm involved in. And I did my grandfather in World War I, and I used as a background all his military records, which are all scanned, and then the photo of him when he joined the British Army, or actually he was in the Naval Cavalry, which always blows my mind. But I've got all of his records, and then I didn't have time to take apart the frame and get photo of the I don't know how you ride the horse on the ship.
I see horse.
I didn't have time to take the frame apart and take actual pictures of the medals. So I just put I Googled the medals that he was awarded and stuck them in there. And now what I want to do is I'm going to upload the actual scans of the whole documents, which are where he was. I'm going to have to do a little digging on the writing, because it's all handwritten on the different places he was during the war. But then I can link to the geolocation of those battle sites and trace where he was, and that's the beauty of it. And then it'll all be hooked to that one picture of him in his uniform, which is we only have one picture of him from World War I. Like, that's it. The picture they took when with the fake ocean in the background, that's it. That's all we have from the wartime. So, of the First World War. We have lots from the Second World War, but that's all we got. And so that's what I like about Ponga the most, is it makes that I don't have to have a bunch of folders separately. And now I can send it out to all my cousins and say, okay, did anybody else get photos of Grandpa in the war that you're hanging on to? Could you please scan them and upload them for me? Because to do that crowdsourcing and tell stories. And I know my mom at one point, she was at one of the battles, and I've forgotten the name of it right now. My mom asked him, well, where she was reading a book about this particular battle, and it was a battle that Canada was involved in World War I. And she said, well, were the Canadians says, were you there? And he goes, oh yeah, you bloody Canadians were shooting at us. Like, that's a story. Apparently things weren't as neat and tidy as they look like, and so friendly fire was a thing back then. So I'm hoping people will come forward with more stories like that.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty, I think, of Ponga.
Thank you. Well, what a wonderful way to kind of wrap this up. I think what we've seen is, in Kathy's Corner, we are facing the realities of those artifacts, the paper world that we live in and ride around in, so to speak. And how to bring those into a digital world where we can access not only so much information that's out there and accessible, but also the opinions, voices, and memories of our loved ones who are also still there, out there, have insight and perspective, including being on the other side of a war line, to be able to bring in context. And it really is about context. And Kathy's insights about context of something as simple as, again, a color-coded or white 3x5 card, and painter's tape, and colored pencils and pens, and all the different ways that we bring meaning that we can come back to and bring these pieces together. So thank you so much, Kathy. This has been a wonderful, wonderful session. I think you've seen the link to the blog post that was really fun to get done. We kind of rushed through it to get it done and out there. And I expect that we'll continue to add to it, because nothing says digital like continuous change. Which is, I suppose, kind of the message, isn't it?
Yep. So
Any last
So
questions
much
before
for
we go?
joining us. We really appreciate it. And we hope you come back next month.
Absolutely. Welcome, everyone. Thank
And
you
if
so
you
much.
come back, can I, one more thing I'll say, if you are coming back next month, maybe all of us can discuss what progress we've made. We didn't have time to ask you what your next step was, but either when we come back, what was your next step? What is your next step? Or what progress have you made in the month?
Great call.
Yeah,
Great call. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone.
thank you.
Great, thanks.
All
Thanks
right,
Thank
very
you.
much.
Lovely to
Bye.
meet you, Suzette.
Bye-bye.
Bye.